So now we move from defining yourself as a product, understanding who you are, what your strengths are, what your interests are, what skills you enjoy, what skills are going to be a challenge for you, and somewhat get grounded in yourself as a product. And now we move into the second part of the class, which is about taking that product to market. And the first thing that we'll address is branding. So, in Grodsky's words, think of your brand as your promise to clients about what they can expect from working with you and how you differ from others. And this was a lot of the conversations that we had when we met with respect to the bios is the aspiration as well as what you bring, what I called your superpower or your X factor that speaks specifically to the human side of you. And then once the human side of you has attracted your audience, how do you do your work and how does it differ from others, either stylistically or conceptually or in the unique qualities you bring to it? And that becomes your brand. So once you are clear on your brand, it's really important that you're able to articulate it. Articulating it in a clear, concise sentence that describes the essence of who you are and what you do as a therapist. And when creating that description, language really matters. And when you think about the language that matters, you want to look at words like systemic and whether or not anybody really knows what that is unless they're one of us, or marriage and family therapy. How does that how does that get interpreted to somebody who is an individual and wondering whether you'll see them or not? Words like stuck really do exemplify where people are when they're seeking therapy, but also words that are very, very used in profiles. Terms of art, such as structural, strategic, along those lines, can also be a confusion for the reader. And then limiting terms. When you talk about families, when you talk about parents, are you being as inclusive as you intend to be to incorporate all different kinds of families, people who come into parenting in many different ways? And so when you're thinking about your language, you want to think about whether what you intend to say is actually what you've said. And that will be a lot of why we are presenting our websites and so your brand is aspirational. It's best articulated with thought and vision about the direction you want your practice to take. And when you're thinking about the direction that you want your practice to take, when you're articulating your brand, it's important to think about the advantages to this type of message or the risks. The advantages being it gives you a lot of latitude to create your brand from a hopeful and from a motivated perspective, and the risks are that it might not be authentic. And I encourage you to think of other advantages and risks as you begin to articulate your brand so that you can be aware of them. For those of you who've taken ethics, you know that it's always important to have an eye, ear, and brain on the potential unintended consequences of every action. So when you're defining your brand, casting a wide net is an option. We've talked about this in our discussions about your biographies, is the attempt to try to attract a large audience. There are advantages and disadvantages to those too, many of which we've discussed. The advantages being you cast a wide net. You get as many people as possible to see your particular description of what you offer. And of course, the disadvantages are that you may not stand out. The unique qualities that you bring to the table might not be present when casting a wide net. And it's a little more difficult to identify your target and to approach them when you're casting a wide net. On the other hand, if you don't know your target, it's a good place to start and see who comes. The other opportunity and option is to create a niche, a specialty. And there are certainly advantages and disadvantages to that option. And when I say in the PowerPoints, create this language exercise, it's really encouraging you to sort of create language around a niche or casting a wide net. Many of you have done that already in your bios, so I don't feel it's necessary to really do it, just to kind of think about it. Also, with your niche, how do you identify your target and how do you um, reel them in, so to speak? So, once you've identified your brand, you've got to take it to market. Marketing can be two varieties: push marketing and pull marketing. Push marketing is the hard sell, where you actually go into an arena, an environment, a situation, and talk about your skills directly, talk about what you do, provide pamphlets, provide brochures, direct people to your website. It's what you'll do when you speak to schools or churches or doctors' offices or other therapists. It's how you get yourself out there in the most direct way. But you always have to be thinking about the implications for the therapeutic relationship. And in push marketing, it's important to know that the moment you start to speak about yourself is the moment the therapeutic relationship begins. Because whether you're talking to a direct client or to someone who will refer direct clients, it's your first presentation of yourself and the first time someone's going to have an opportunity to say, this is what she does, this is what he does, but I know them, and this is really why you'll like them. So you want to know that you're starting your therapeutic relationship each time you speak about yourself as a clinician. Pull marketing is a little bit softer, it's a little bit less direct, and it's also a little bit more overt in the therapeutic relationship that's being created. This is where you're just a little bit more subtle. You are a little bit less direct. Perhaps you're in a conversation with a peer, you're in a conversation with another clinician, just kind of talking about how you see the world and who you are, and more about the sort of less business aspect of providing therapy and just the more human aspect, which isn't to say you can't be marketing yourself. It's just that doesn't seem that way to the person you're talking to. The elevator pitch is really an important component to any launching business. And the elevator pitch is really named after the amount of time you have in a typical elevator ride, which is about 10 to 15 seconds, to tell people who you are and what you do. And so it's really important for everybody to come up with an elevator pitch so that when you're talking to an unsuspecting person in an unexpected moment who says, oh, what do? You can come up in 15 seconds with a great encapsulated statement of what you do, and then you present it in a way that lets them know how you do it. You choose a tone. You are very selective about your content. You have it memorized and you love it, so that initially you're exuding passion, you're exuding the components of your personality that are going to come through in the therapy room, and you're letting somebody know what you do. That elevator pitch is going to be something that should be in your back pocket every time you leave your home. The other aspect of marketing is just simply marketing. Talk, talk, talk. Share with everyone all the time what you do, how you do it, what you want to do, where you do it. Have your print materials and your website readily available. Really, really let people know, because when you talk about it that way, you exude confidence and passion that's going to speak more to your brand and more to your ability to provide therapy than an intellectual conversation about systems, though that's also quite impressive. When you're thinking about your market and you're deciding whether to cast a wide net or whether to create a niche, you want to think about the following things: your personal and professional interests, the population, the community that you're working toward, the training you have and how you can connect that to your ability to provide therapy in this context, how you measure your success, whether it's your degrees, whether it's your accolades, whether it's your wisdom, and your credentials. And if you do create a niche, you want to have a compelling story. Why are you qualified to work within this niche? What brought you here? What's your interest? What's your passion, and how do you express that to the people who you are directly speaking to?